the computer.
Me?
Okay.
Me,
Oh, did you get the thing?
got it.
Two. Okay. Welcome to Dorking Out. My name is Sonia Mansfield, and stop the presses! Joining me is my podcasting sister from another mister and the co-host of Dorking Out, Margo D. Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. Stop the presses. That's the only line I could think of from this movie.
Stop the presses! We are dorking out about 1994's The Paper, directed by Ron Howard, written by David and Stephen Cope, I think is how you pronounce it. And Stephen Cope or Cop,
What's the spelling?
Coepp.
Okay.
Sounds like Cope. He was the editor in chief of Time magazine. So
Jesus.
I know maybe there's,
And a screenwriter?
and a screenwriter. Interesting. It's
Yeah.
it This movie has a great cast. Michael Keaton, Glenn Close, Marisa Tomei, adorable. Everybody
Very
drink.
adorable.
Randy Quaid, who used to be my least favorite Quaid and now mm. Robert Duvall, Jason Alexander, Spalding Gray, Catherine O'Hara is in there. Of course, Clint Howard shows up, Jason Robards. My friend, did you see this in the theater?
No, I did not see this in the theater, even though I'm a big Ron Howard fan, and especially then I would see all of his movies.
Yeah, I definitely saw it in the theater and I was still in college at the time and a journalism major. So I was like, "Oh, they made a movie just for me." And yeah, young Sonia totally saw this and was like, "I can't wait. Someday I'm going to work at the newspaper and this is going to be my life and it's going to be so exciting." And I think it captures that feeling of what we think newspapers are like all the time.
I have a million questions for you. If
Yeah.
y'all don't know, and Sonia probably will get into this, but she worked at a newspaper, major newspaper in San Francisco. She's a newspaper person at her core,
Yes.
and I'm dying to know what you think of this
Well,
movie.
I will say, like, so I worked at like weekly newspapers for like community newspapers. And then I worked my way up to the San Francisco Examiner here, which had switched from a daily afternoon paper to like a daily tabloid. So it was very much like this kind of vibe for a while,
Mhm.
but it's also San Francisco. It's not as high energy, let's say, as New York. So it's a little bit of a different vibe, but this version of the newspaper that you're seeing with a lot of people like running and yelling and stuff, that definitely happens, but it's not as constant as you're
Okay.
seeing in this movie. And the most accurate is when I was at the newspaper, election night looked like that, what you're seeing in the movie, where everyone's running around. There's a lot of yelling. It's a lot of like, hold the press, don't, we're waiting for that. That's what I would see on election night. But in general, the day to day didn't look quite that hectic consistently. That's not to say that it's not like that, or I should say was, because I'm sure it's very different now in a newsroom.
I it's been beyond to think about. Like it's 30 years old,
Yes,
which I feel
yes.
like, oh my God, that baby is 30 years old now. Marissa
Yeah,
Tomei's baby. Oh my
is 30
God.
years old and probably working at a newspaper, but also
Or
this
not.
movie, or not, this movie is about print newspaper, which is, it's
Dying, if not
dying.
dead.
It's not completely dead, but it's dying. And like online wasn't a thing yet. So this is a totally different movie if they made this now, because there is the idea that they're running the press and that is very expensive, but it takes nothing to update a story online. So it's a totally different movie if they make this now. But it it does capture the energy of what it can be like to work at a newspaper. This movie also captures like the kind of special person you have to be to work at a newspaper. Like, um,
Yes.
A newspaper working at a daily newspaper like that does wreak havoc on your personal life, which is one of the reasons I walked away from it. Like I was like, I don't like this. You work long hours. The money is not good. Like Robert Duvall gives Glenn Close a speech. Like if you're looking to make money in this job, you will never be happy. Like this is not the kind of job where you make a lot of money. And you are around bad news all day, and it really warps your sense of humor. Every journalist I know has a fucked up sense of humor.
Right. Gallows humor.
Yeah, and it takes a special person to stick with it. And I know people who still work at the newspaper. Some of my best friends are people I met when I worked at the newspaper, and we always joke about how we served together in the newspaper because it's hard work and long hours and low pay,
Yeah.
and you are not appreciated by your bosses and sometimes the readers too.
No, and it's so wild to think now because I worked in magazines. It's how much I worked at Condé Nast for a while, and I was told they make all their money from the want ads from the Gannett
Yes.
newspapers. And I was like, really? It's not from Vogue and it's not from that. But seriously, when that when Craigslist came out, the direct hit to
Yep.
newspapers, oh my God, right away.
Yeah, and the depiction of Glenn Close's character in this movie, she's the managing editor, and she refers to herself at one point as like a bean counter. Like she is the one who is worrying about the money because she thinks that's a good way to get ahead in a newspaper is to like deliver a profit. She is not wrong. Like people do care about that sort of thing, but it's newspapers in general just don't make money, especially now, because people don't want to pay for news. We pay for news, by the way, Margo and I.
Yes.
We do because we feel that's the right thing to do. But a lot of people don't want to pay for news, and that has an impact. And well, we can get in more into the
Yeah.
like into the morals of what is being played out here because I also have thoughts and feelings about this the moral center of this movie. But if you haven't seen the paper,
Yes.
it is streaming. Go rent it. And this one is set 24 hours at the New York Sun, which is, I'm sure, supposed to be the New York Post.
It's absolutely New York Post. And there's also like I'm a New Yorker now. So this movie comes out a year before I moved to New York. It's a year before I graduated college. So yeah, and funny enough, Adam Risky is a regular visitor to the show, and I
Yeah.
was bugging Adam to do this movie because I thought the movie was set in Chicago for some reason. It's been so long.
Yeah. Well,
So I was like, oh, this is why Adam was like, I'm not feeling this one.
I totally forgot what city it was in. So, and I haven't seen it since the theater. So, yeah, I mean, it's set in New York and it feels very New York to me
Yes,
now
it's
watching it.
extremely New York. I feel like such an asshole because it's so freaking New York. But it's like that's a Pete Hamill is like one of the guys there that who's trying to do a Pete Hamill who's a famous Brooklyn reporter. He
Hmm.
wrote for the Daily News, was a columnist. We had like really big time columnists. That was a big deal.
Yes.
Um, you had Herb Caen in San Francisco. Like,
Yes.
yeah, we had I'm trying to think of names and they're like popping out of my head. But the tabloid, Page Six, the New York Daily News and the New York Post were always in competition with each other. And even now, you look at the paper in the morning and you see them side by side when I go to the bodega and I crack up. Like
Yeah.
they look at things completely differently.
Yes. They absolutely do. And a tabloid newspaper, the whole goal is to be like, I guess, loud, for lack of a better word. Like it's a huge picture, a giant headline, like the front page is very exaggerated. The story inside is legit. Like it's sourced, it's all the things, but like that front page is like advertising almost. Like you're not gonna believe what you're gonna see inside. You know,
Gotcha.
gotcha. And the Examiner 100% did this. Like we
Yeah.
had huge front page stories is like Wacko Jacko. And when 9/11 happened, we had the famous like bastards like headline.
Jesus.
Like, yeah, I know. So bananas. But like that it was a way to get people to pick up your paper was to be like, "Oh shit. Gotcha. Ooh, I can't resist." So that's what tabloids do. That's
Yeah, and it used to be like, you grab the paper and you get on the subway and you go to work, or you get on the train and you go to work, or the bus. It's
yes.
something you read on the way to work. This
Yeah.
is, or you brought your Walkman. But yeah, this is how you got your news. And then you get to the office and like uh, everybody read page six, of course. Everybody, but everybody
Yeah.
knows what the headlines are. And then all the radio stations talk about it in the morning. So you
Yes.
feel like, yeah, so everyone's talking about the same stuff.
Everyone was talking about the same stuff. That is a great way to put it. And I used to take our what would be our subway here in the Bay Area. I used to take BART from the East Bay into San Francisco every day for the newspaper job I had. And at a certain point, I noticed that people were not reading the paper. They had computers open. And I was like, oh, what I'm doing is going away. Like
Yeah.
in not completely because people are probably reading things online, but like I knew I was like, oh, things are changing. And like I said, it takes a special person. And at a certain point, I was like, I'm not this person.
Now, I'm just thinking now, like in my apartment in the vestibule area, there used to be the New York Times every Sunday.
Hmm.
And there was a bunch of us that used to get it, and nobody gets it now.
Yeah, it is what it is, as
It
my
is what
dad
it.
says.
Oh God.
It is a whole, it's just a whole thing. It's nobody has time to sit down and like read a paper, and it's just easier to get it on your phone.
Yeah,
I get
I'm as
it.
guilty. Yeah.
I'm just as guilty. I used to get the print newspaper, but the truth is it just started piling up
Yeah,
because
it's and the magazines too.
yeah,
Like it's all that recycling that you take out like every week. It was so heavy and it felt so wasteful.
yep, yeah,
And but those are all these jobs that are gone too. I mean, and then yeah,
that
ugh,
too. That
yeah.
too. But this one, so this is set in 94. This came out in 94. So print media is still all the rage. And there is a big murder that happens in Brooklyn, right? It's in Brooklyn.
Williamsburg.
And it's two like older white guys, business guys, and some young black kids walk by and they are seen at the crime. We know they are innocent. Like we are shown that they are innocent, but
Right.
so this big murder happens, and the New York
And
Daily,
do
what
you see in
what
the
do they call
car?
it?
It says on the car, it says Whitey.
Yes, this white. It's
So
like
it's supposed to be racially motivated. This is how they establish the
it's
racial politics in this movie.
it's
Not great.
totally what a white person would spray on a car
Ah,
to make it look like, because that's I'm sure that's what black people are just referring to us as whiteys. Or maybe they are. I don't know, but I don't think they are.
I
Um,
don't think these kids would go through the trouble of shooting random two men and then taking spray paint and then spraying on the car, Whitey,
whitey.
and then running away.
It reminds me of the comedy Fear of the Black Hat, where they
Love
it's
Fear
like
of a Black Hat.
it's like a if you haven't seen it, it's like a Spinal Tap but with a rap group like an NWA, and they have a whole album that's called Kill Whitey.
And they have the leapfrog when there's sort of doggy dog, it's the leapfrog. It's a frog.
So it's
It's
so
so
funny.
funny.
Oh my God, I love that movie. We need to talk about it
Yeah.
soon. Okay, so this one, the New York Sun, the fictional tabloid, they don't have the big story. They didn't get the murder, and instead their lead story is that the parking commissioner double parks or something like that. And they don't want to be scooped again. And Michael Keaton is the Metro editor, and he's really pissed that they missed this story, and he really wants to get it.
I'm sorry, Sonia.
Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you. Can you describe some of the jobs? Because I don't think some people know.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
what a
So,
metro editor is.
okay, a Metro editor would be like he's the city news editor. So he's the one that would run, say, the local news section
Hmm.
of your newspaper. uh Glenn Close is playing a character named Alicia. She's the managing editor, so she is responsible for
Budgets.
budgets and just everything that's in the newspaper, but also you spend a lot of the more you move up in newspapers, the less time you spend doing the part of the job that you love. You
Same
spend
thing in magazines.
Yes, you spend more time in spreadsheets and
Yep,
less time writing. So she's on that track. And then Robert Duvall is playing the editor in chief, which means he's responsible for all of it, the
right.
budget, everything that's in every section. Like, but Michael Keaton's character is only responsible for like the news section. He doesn't give
And
a
it's
shit about features or
right, right. No movie reviews or anything
yeah,
like that. It's
yeah.
just what's happening. And then it's New York City, so we have five boroughs. And Manhattan is the center, and then there's Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan. What am I forgetting? Queens. Sorry,
Queens.
Queens. Okay.
So there is this big he's mad because they are scooped and newspaper people also very competitive,
Oh God,
very
yeah.
competitive. Like and not just about like their stories. They also like every newspaper office I've been in, they all have fucking March Madness and fantasy football. They're competitive in all things. Like they
Right.
so he's really mad that they've lost out on this story. He is married to Marisa Tomei, adorable, who is very,
Beautiful.
very, very pregnant in this movie. And she is someone who used to be a reporter at this paper, but she is now on her maternity leave with the idea that she's coming back in 6 months, apparently. And she clearly misses it. She is one of
Yeah.
those, she is a newspaper person through and through, and she is really, really missing it. And she's super scared. And she does a really good job of playing someone who's like loves
It's a
being a newspaper reporter, but also someone who's afraid of losing her identity by having children.
she
And
that is a thankless part she has
she
because
does.
whenever you're playing, you have to be a very strong actress to play against Michael Keaton because he's so likable,
Yeah.
even when he's wrong.
Yes.
Like it takes a really strong, like Harry Gar is really great, Mr.
Yes.
Mom. And I think Marissa Tomei is really strong here because she's the one that's constantly trying to get him to like get to the. So he's interviewing. There's a what's I forget what the newspaper's called, but it's obviously trying to
It's
be the
like
Wall Street
yeah,
Journal.
it's like the New York it's the New York Sentinel, I
Yes, the
think.
Sentinel.
And I think they're supposed to be the New York Times. Like they're supposed to be like we're the news of the world.
I
Like
think they're Wall Street Journal.
okay, could be too. Like
Yeah,
and but they are very like
buttoned
we
up.
have yeah, very buttoned up. That's a great way of putting it. And they clearly have lots of money and funding and they are not scrappy. Like,
Right.
and he interviews with Spalding Gray and Spalding Gray refers to it. He's like, it's a cute little paper you have there. Oh, that would piss me off too. I would be so
Oh,
mad. And it pisses him off and he like steals a tip off his desk, which is seems very accurate to me.
really? I was going to
Yes.
ask you.
Yeah, like you'll do anything to like get the story and get the tip and get on the right trail of a good story. And so yeah, it seems exactly right to me that he would do that. He interviews, they're like the job is yours if you want it and he's like I need to think about it because the truth is he doesn't want that.
He
He d-
loves his job.
yeah, he loves his job. He loves the energy that it
Rush.
brings. He loves and it is a huge rush. It's a huge rush to get a story and write on a deadline like that and like hear the printing presses run and know that like you fucking nailed it. It's a huge rush. It's an addiction. I get it. I understand why so many journalists drink. Like there's an
Yes.
addiction to it for sure. And like he loves that. He doesn't want to work at the place that's buttoned up, that it's going to take him away from the part of the job he loves.
Right.
And but he doesn't have the balls to admit it to Marissa Tomei because she's giving up her reporting to have a baby and he isn't going to make a sacrifice in her eyes that she's making. So that's their conflict and she does have a thankless part in that she just keeps showing up
pregnant, like super pregnant.
Yeah.
And like, what are you doing? Did you say yes to the job? Did you say no to the job? It's a lot of that. And I did like the scene with her and Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah.
Because Catherine O'Hara plays somebody like she used to work, but she doesn't anymore, and she's like, has a bunch of wine with her lunch, and
Feels
Marissa
it.
Tomei's like, "Oh God, is that going to be
She
me?"
she fills that glass all the way to the top. Like
Yep.
she drinks a bottle of Chardonnay by herself. Like it's pretty impressive, but she's giving her real talk there. Like as someone who, has had a baby, like it is really hard to hold on to your identity when you have a baby. It's really hard. And that's what Marisa Tomei is struggling with. There's a whole other movie that could be going on here with
Right.
just the Marisa. The truth is, a lot of the characters in here could have their own movie, which is one of the reasons why this movie's kind of fun to watch. Like, Michael Keaton is awesome. We love Michael Keaton here. And he's doing what Michael Keaton does best. He's like really like quick and funny and harried and like I love his interactions with everybody about like how he wants to drink Coke all the time and the people constantly asking him, "What's another word for
Blah blah blah.
blank?" That is a constant. That is also a constant. The There's also in newsrooms the constant asking of like the spelling of things and the correct use of things and how people are like, that's not how you use the word evacuate, and then it turns into huge fights where people are like, you're using evacuation wrong. It's like the most nerdy shit you've ever heard. But
Same thing in magazines, and
yes,
I worked in book publishing. Yeah.
yeah, they argue about words and you're like, oh my God, you're such delightful nerds. But they take that shit really serious. So he's running around the newspaper. He wants to get the true story. Like he wants the facts on, did these kids actually murder these two white businessmen? And
And
go
I'm
ahead. Sorry.
confused. So for the story, and this also made me laugh stupid hard. But there's a character named Sandusky. They keep
Yeah.
bringing up Sandusky, which would have a whole other, you know,
Yes. A whole other story attached to that name later.
yeah.
And that is Jason Alexander is playing the parking commissioner. And he's like something Sandusky. I don't remember. And that's the story that Randy Quaid's columnist wrote about that he just double parks everywhere. And it's like the headline was like no parking for you or something. I forget. But yeah, there's a whole thing about like he is super mad that Randy Quaid wrote this story about him, and Randy Quaid thinks that Sandusky wants to kill him, and that's why he's sleeping in Michael Keaton's office. And he's like carrying a gun, and at one point he shoots the gun off in the office, and
Nobody
that's
does anything.
no, yeah, and they're just like, oh,
That's
oops,
unusual. He's
yeah.
in a mood.
I would argue that that doesn't really happen, but maybe it happens somewhere. I don't know, but I've definitely worked with people who are weirdos
Hmm.
and eccentric. I've worked with people who literally wrote their columns on yellow legal notepads and then we had to type them in,
Oh,
shit.
really?
Yeah, I was like, what an asshole. He was such an asshole. He like he like worked with Hunter S. Thompson and then he just fucking never bought a dinner for the rest of his life talking about Hunter S. Thompson. I was like, what a fucking prick. I didn't like that guy. He also like had an eye patch and he had like an old smelly like basset hound that he would bring into the office and that dog would just shit and piss everywhere. That dog was so sweet though. And
Who are these people?
who are these people? I love that dog, by the way. It was so cute, but it
Basset
was
hounds are adorable.
yeah, but he was so smelly. Like you pet him and then your hands smell bad. And I remember I brought a treat, like a little bone in for him once, and he liked to hang out with me because I was very sweet to the dog, but I didn't really like the guy. Um, he was an acquired taste, to say the least. What were we talking about? Oh, Randy Quaid. Yeah, so he's playing the eccentric columnist who shoots his gun off in the office. Again, that's not something that would happen, and it's not something that I found particularly funny. Like,
No, no, there's a lot of things but I think they're trying to Hunter S. Thompson him now that
yes,
I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, and honestly, like, I find people like that insufferable, but
They're exhausting.
there are so many people that like worship at the altar of Hunter S. Thompson, and that's fine. You do you. But I'm not one of those people. I'm just like, you're a weirdo. Don't talk to me.
Write in complete sentences, please.
Yeah, exactly. And also I can barely read your writing on this yellow notepad. Me and this other uh gentleman at the newspaper used to argue over whose turn it was to type in that bullshit. Like we were like, it's your turn, asshole. Like we hated it. Okay, so where were we? Randy Quaid, blah blah blah. Oh, and then so Robert Duvall is the editor in chief. He has like a smaller storyline in here. Again, he's doing a good job though. Of he apparently has prostate cancer
Mhm.
and he realizes he like he has a daughter that he is not in touch with and he is like questioning his own mortality now at this point and he's like, "Hey, maybe I need to like, I don't know, spend time with people I love." And he stalks his daughter and she sets
Jill
boundaries.
Hennessy.
Bill Hennessy from Law and Order
Dunk
and
dunk.
and Crossing Jordan, a show that existed.
My
Uh,
mother's favorite show
oh
for a
my God.
while.
Was she a mortician? No, she was a medical examiner who
And
solved
medical
crimes.
examiner who solved crimes
Yeah,
with
she was
Miguel
like,
Ferrer. Yeah,
yeah, she was like Quincy. She was like,
sure.
yeah, she was the Quincy. Um, yeah, he is actually quite shitty to her when they meet again in public, and she's very good about her boundaries, and I'm 100% on her side.
Yes.
I think we're not supposed to be. I think we're supposed to be on his side.
It's a movie that's asking us to feel sorry for him
Yeah.
when it's clearly he caused so much fucking pain that his
Yeah.
own daughter like recoils at the sight of him.
Yeah,
So maybe
she
he's a lot worse than we're understanding.
yeah, he is what Michael Keaton's character can turn into.
There you go.
Like he is this is the path you're on, Michael Keaton. If you don't keep your shit together. If you continue to put the newspaper first over your wife and kids, this is your future. And there's a whole thing with Rob. So he'd like go, Robert Duvall like meets with her. She's like, I told you I don't really want to have a relationship with you. It turns out she's married. She has a kid. He's very excited about that, but he doesn't get to be a part of it. At some point around the end of the movie, he fully shows up at her house
And
and
stares through her window.
stares through her window like a creeper and sees the baby and he's like, "Yay, a
I'm a
baby."
grandpa.
And then he walks off. That's his story. That's it. Goodbye, Robert Duvall. Thanks for showing up. So that's his story. Um then the Glenn Close character, her whole thing is like she used to be like a features editor. I think they kind of casually throw it out there and that she has moved up. She wants to make money. You're never going to do that in newspapers. You're never going to be happy. She's sleeping. She's having an affair with one of the fellow editors. By the way, that shit is spot on.
Oh
Everyone at the new
yeah.
everyone in newspapers back in the day were sleeping with each other because they're the only people who understand you're fucking crazy.
I think
And
that's also kind of your life at high pressure jobs in your
yeah,
20s and 30s.
yeah,
That's was my experience. Like at the offices I worked at, a lot of people were fucking around, which I had no idea at the time.
yeah. It has to do with
A lot of
long,
nooners.
your long hours. You're
Yeah,
lonely. It's hard to meet people because that's one of the reasons I left. I was like, I can't date here. Like I have to cancel dates all the
right.
time. And then next thing you know, I'm hooking up with like the guy who designs pages sitting next to me. And I'm like, but I don't like him. But but I'm like, but this is what I got. Like, what are you doing? So there is a lot of that.
We're
But
learning
she's
a lot about Sonia, y'all.
yeah, you are. Sonia used to guess what? Sonia used to make bad choices. Hey, like, but uh Glenn Close's character is also making bad choices. And she has a not just Glenn Close doesn't have a thankless role. The character she's playing has a thankless role at that newspaper to
I will
hold.
say this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I think Glenn Close looks beautiful in this movie.
she does. She absolutely looks beautiful. And her character, Alicia, has a thankless role at that newspaper. of being the person who has to hold people financially responsible, to be the
And
person.
she's
Yeah.
and the woman, and as an attractive woman.
Yes.
Right. They don't like, and she says, like, you never ask me out for drinks when you goes out for drinks and stuff like that, which is very true, which is also like every office, like
Yeah,
the guys tend to hang out together.
they do. And
They go to the
they do.
strip clubs and stuff like that.
Yep. And on top of that, she is the person that she has to say no all the time.
Right.
Like, no, you can't have the chair that supports your back. No, we're not going to run the accurate story because we already started running the press, which I would hope that newspapers weren't doing, but I'm sure they probably were doing. Like,
Absolutely.
because running the printing press is super expensive. So I feel bad for her, but some of it is her own doing,
Yeah, that's
So
the job. It's the
yeah,
gig.
it's the gig, and she made that choice. So all of these different stories are like bumping into each other and spreading apart, and while they're trying to get at least one person to go on the record and say that these two young black boys didn't kill these people, and the cops don't think that they did it, but the newspapers
Okay.
want them to be guilty,
Right.
I
It's
guess.
two black youths, and
Yeah.
their storyline is not explored I don't think
No,
authentically.
they're given no character. They
No
are
character development. They're just
no.
kids, which is good that but the cop that's in the movie, he passed away recently. And he's a guy that's a real cop. He's the one that absolutely was behind the Central Park Five.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
Sheehan was his name, which is not
Yes.
saying much. Everyone's named Sheehan in New York. But he was a cop who then he became an actor slash reporter for like Fox News in New York. And so
Okay.
there's some big like there was the Central Park there was the Central Park murder of Jennifer. Oh God,
Uh,
the
I for
strangling. John, oh God damn it. But you know what I'm talking about?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember her name. But
Jennifer, but she and Robert Chambers was his name, the killer.
oh,
Um
Patrick Chambers, the
Robert Chambers.
yeah, yeah. And
Robert
then
Chambers, and then Jennifer, I'm fucking up her name. I can't remember her last name, but he strangled her in the park. And at
yes,
first, the cops were like, "Oh, she was a prostitute, so that's what happened to her." And it actually took real people like, "No, she was strangled during with a partner
yeah,
who was like standing 10 feet away from you, Yahoo." So, I mean, the cops in New York just tend to. It's very Law and Order-ish. They just tend to like,
yeah,
"Well, this
yeah.
was his last cup of coffee. Ding ding."
Yeah. we
Anyway,
just we just went through this with the Luigi like shooting the
yes.
healthcare CEO, and like we see them like searching the park, and they're like not really searching the park. It's like there's some
No, and they
lazy.
bring
Yeah.
him back like, and I'm sorry if I'm getting political here,
No,
but
you're
some
good.
people were like talking about like they bring him back, and Eric Adams, our shitty mayor, was walking with the cops
Oh my
like the perp
God. I was
walk,
like,
and people were like, "Is this Bane? Are they like?"
totally. I thought the same. I was like, oh my God, this is like right out of like Batman, and like they treating him like he's the Joker. Like this is so ridiculous.
It's like Christopher Nolan was directing
Totally.
it. I know. It's he's supposedly in the same jail as Diddy,
Oh, geez.
which is not too far from my
I
apartment.
know. Well, you should go down and say
Him and
hi.
I are gonna have to do a road. My friend and I are gonna have to do a road trip. We go to the Costco and like swing by the jail.
Well, speaking of the perp walk, there is a whole
Yes,
thing
there you
in
go.
here where they are going to bring the two suspects out of booking to their like police van, and they're going to take them to holding or whatever. And so there's this big perp walk that's happening like a half hour before their newspaper print deadline, and so they're going to send their
And
photographer
cops know
down.
this, by the way.
Yes, this is their opportunity to get a picture of the perps. And Michael Keaton is trying to fuck over the story at first because he doesn't want them running the wrong stuff. He's doing the right thing. He's just maybe going about it sometimes the wrong way. Like he wants the truth. He doesn't want them to print something that's false. So he, instead of sending the more experienced photographer, he sends the like rookie. And at one point they refer to her as like a 14-year-old. I think she's probably 22 or 23. And she, those things can be really intimidating. You are walking into a big
Yeah.
crowd of people, and journalists are not shy. They will push you and shove you and
Photographers will shove a
yes,
pregnant woman out of the way to get a
yes,
picture.
yes.
Yeah.
And they just knock her around like she's not even there. And she just like, at one point she falls and the camera clicks and she just like accidentally like gets the perfect shot, which, is very movie and I love.
Yeah.
And I love that she's going through the pictures and she's like, please, please be good. Please be good. Please be good. Please be good.
We
Because
know how
this,
that is.
yes, because pre-digital, like she's developing all, this is her shot. This is it. Like you're developing these pictures and you hope you got one. And she did accidentally get one. So they're going to run the picture and they're going to run the big headline that says gotcha. And Michael Keaton wants to run they didn't do it because he truly believes they didn't do it. So he's like got Randy Quaid and they're going to the police station to like talk to Sheehan and like get him to admit that maybe these kids didn't do it. And
There's no way the kids could have done it. And they're very innocent and you feel
yes,
terrible for them. But once again, that part of the movie, the politics of that are not explored very
not at
well.
all. Not at all. And
Right.
like there's the kids just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. There's no fingerprints, there's no nothing. Like there's no reason to splash their and the movie actually does do something else that's really good is that and the I think it's Sheehan who talks about it. Like if they run a story that's like they didn't do it and they get it wrong, like it's the cops that will look bad, not
Right.
and then the newspaper will run the correction on like page 23. Like
Yes, and they do.
and they do. They absolutely
Mhm.
do that. And that is 100% still a thing. Like they will run with whatever information they have at the time and be like, "We'll fix it later." Or
I
this
used to
this
do
is this is true right now.
Oh, it absolutely is. I used to work for it was called Gruner and Jahr. It's Meredith Publishing or it's .com, whatever it is now. But it was a magazine called Fitness Magazine, and we had a deal with New York Post where they could take one of our stories and reprint it,
Hmm.
but give us full credit. So this is in the February issue of blah blah blah, and they did the story and they didn't give us credit.
Boo.
And my editor in chief is like calling me, like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not at the New York Post press office. And the reporter was really embarrassed. He's like, I'm sorry, my editor took it out. And it was a big mess.
Oh, that used to
Oh, but it gives me diarrhea to think about it
yeah.
because, but yeah, you worry about like what goes to the paper because you never know how accurate it's going to be. You don't know, like it goes through so many people, legal,
Yep,
it goes through a lot of people. So when you're giving a quote, you don't know what it's going to turn out like.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's I think this movie gets a lot right with in terms of vibe, I
Hmm.
guess. And but it is exaggerated. And it has to be. Like it's
Oh
not a
yeah, it's a movie.
it's a movie, it's not a documentary. It has to be exaggerated and they're trying to tell a story in 24 hours. So obviously like a lot of shit goes down in 24 hours. This is again, it's not accurate. It doesn't really there might be
No,
days where it looks like this, but most of the time it doesn't. Like this is not your typical day in a newspaper. But there is a whole thing about like he finally gets that confirmation that the cops think these kids didn't do it. He's they're like racing back. Uh Glenn Close's character was like, we have to run the press. We have to. Like it's way past
right.
deadline at this point. And they have this huge they have like a fucking fist fight over the I'm like, again, this is not something that happens. Like he fully like they fully fight each other. It's ridiculous. Like it's over the top. And at one point they put a siren on their car so they can like run red lights. And I was like, that's not a thing. But then I was reading that apparently some reporters in New York used to get like an emergency police light that they would take from the police and put it on their
Doesn't
cars.
shock me.
I'm like, I never did that, but I did have a parking pass that I totally abused.
I'm
Like,
sure, yeah, they all do that. And they get into all the events they want.
yeah, I used to have a parking pass that I would put out all the time at concerts and shit so I could park super close. And I absolutely abused my journalist credentials to see free movies and shit. I'm the worst. I'm the
It's the,
worst.
but you don't get paid as well, but you do get
Yes.
those kind of benefits. So that's the whole thing.
And this is
Right.
true for magazines too. I know this is true.
Yes.
You go any event where they were like, we have food and booze and you could eat
Yeah.
and drink for free, journalists will go. We will go because we're fucking hungry, man. We're
Can I bring a
hungry.
plus one?
We got plus
Can I?
one.
Yeah.
So they have their big fight over the press. It's so, and the whole like stop the presses, and I'm sure that's happened, the stop the presses, but again, movies make it feel like it happens all the time. And then there is this whole thing about she says, look, the story is wrong, but we only have to be right for a day.
Right.
And it's so accurate about what we see now, I think. It's like
Mhm.
it's honestly it's a fucking embarrassing take. And you'd like to think that newspapers won't knowingly run an incorrect story. And we've talked about this on our other podcast, What a Creep. I
Mhm.
brought it up. So I'm sorry if you've heard those and I'm repeating, but there is a difference between what people think they think reporters need to be fair. And it's not that reporters need to be fair, it's that reporters need to tell the truth.
They need to be accurate.
Yes. And that there's a difference between fair and the truth. And like, they need to and it's not that you need to be right for a day. Like, she is willingly knowingly running a story that is incorrect.
And people, and we use sources. We use
Yeah.
newspapers and original sources. And sometimes you and I, we've done for other show, What a Creep, we've looked up stuff and said, well, the day after this happened, the New York Times said this, but it
Yeah.
turns out, right, like Kitty Genevieve's and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it is their job to be truthful to the best of their abilities up until the very second that they run that paper. And like, she is choosing money over the truth in that moment. And I think that now a lot of, not all reporters, hashtag not all reporters, but a lot of reporters are choosing like an easy path over the more difficult path. It's like,
Well, that's the way to make money. It's
yeah,
clickbait. If you
yeah,
don't, they want to know, like they're going to get a lot of eyeballs on it.
yes,
It's SEO now.
yes, that. And it's like when you're talking about like Washington and politics, there's something to, well, I don't want to piss off my source. It's about access.
Yes.
And it's like, I'll just run whatever bullshit they feed me and claim that I'm being fair by having both sides. And I'm like, well, both sides having both sides isn't the same thing as the truth.
Right. And
And
not every source is credible and not every source is
yes,
equal.
yes, it would be your responsibility to run both sides. But if they say a lie and you know it's a lie, it's your responsibility as a reporter to say, but the truth is this.
Right.
And we, a lot of newspapers, a lot of reporters don't do that anymore. And some is by design, and some of it is, I don't know, maybe they're not taught that that their job is the truth.
Well, I think nowadays, and like, once again, this is 30 years later, but you can update a story really quickly.
Yes.
Um, so if there is an inaccuracy, you can go on there and say, we've had new information since then. We've changed it since it was published at 8:01 a.m. This is the information we got at 10:30 a.m., blah, blah,
Right.
blah. But there's still like that couple of half hours that it was out there with inaccurate
Yeah,
information.
and it can ruin people's lives,
Exactly.
and that's what Michael Keaton is trying to get at here. Is like, if they run a front page with the picture of these two kids and it says gotcha, you could be ruining their lives.
And one of them is going to Penn State for football, and the other
Yeah.
one is, yeah, they're all in they're good kids. They're not bad kids, but they're black kids.
Yeah.
And it's also mid 90s New York City. It
Yes.
was that was the headline, like Brooklyn was scary and Williamsburg, which is now like very expensive and the celebrities live there and stuff. But back then, it's very,
Yeah.
it was gentrified.
Right.
And
And there's
reporters did not know it except for Brooklyn Heights. Like they did not go that much farther.
and there is a little bit of that in the there's two reporters that are both wanting to cover this story real bad. And there's the older white man who's been covering it and not doing it. He's just phoning it in at this point. Like he's barely doing the work. And the younger female reporter who is like, he's a
I'm
late,
from Brooklyn.
yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. He's a lazy asshole. Like, let me
Right.
do this story. And then all of a sudden he fucking cares about his turf the minute she is like interested in like actually doing the story some justice. So there's all of these little tiny stories going on throughout the movie. There's also like a dude who really wants a chair with some back support. He's like buys one and he's trying to get reimbursed and then people keep stealing his chair. Like
That shit really happens.
that 100% happens.
A lot
Like
of hazing.
yeah, and that's not even just newspaper. That
No,
happens
it's
in
all
all offices,
jobs.
all
Yeah.
jobs. If you have a nice
Pranks.
chair, people steal your fucking chairs.
Or when you
Like
go on vacation, you come back and they fuck up your shit on your desk.
yep. Yep.
Yeah.
There's all of that. So they get into their big fight at the printing press. It looks like Glenn Close is going to get her way. They run her the gotcha version and she fires Michael Keaton and like she goes to a bar with Randy Quaid to get a drink and he tells her like you're willingly running a story that's false and you know it and how embarrassing for you basically. Meanwhile, Jason Alexander is there. He's drunk. He sees Randy Quaid. The whole thing about the gun and like
Oh, it's so lame.
it's so lame. And like Jason Alexander like shoots the gun and it hits Glenn Close in the leg while she's trying to call the printing press
She's
to like
calling the printing press from a payphone in a
yes.
bar in Manhattan at like
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night. And just as she's calling to say, stop the presses, she gets shot in the leg. So
Yeah.
then she's on the floor
It's so
trying to
stupid.
reach up to the phone. Like they raise these stakes to just ridiculous
Yes.
levels sometimes, like in Parenthood. There's a lot
Yes.
of, yes, yeah, that being on the roller coaster, woo,
Yeah.
up and down. Yeah,
And they do it with you also can't just have a pregnant woman in a movie like this. Like they had to up the stakes, right? They have to put Marisa Tomei and the baby in danger
right.
where like her pregnancy starts to go wrong, she's wheeled out, all that and all that stuff. Again, she's so good. She like really sells it.
Yeah,
Like she looks really, really scared. She's crying, all this stuff. And that's it takes like a life and death situation for Michael Keaton to realize that he's being a fuck up. And I'm
yeah, he
like,
needs to put his family first.
yeah. And I'm like, I wish the movie didn't have to go there, but it's what it's gonna do. A movie's gonna movie. What are you gonna do?
Right.
So they yeah, and it turns out like Glenn Close's characters at the same. So basically now they're all at the same hospital, and she's there who like won't let them even put her under for the surgery on her leg until they give her a phone so she could call the press, and it's all very over the top and ridiculous. And of course, Marissa Tomei and the baby are fine. Everybody's fine, and
Yeah,
like Michael Keaton has a little heart to heart with Robert Duvall where he's like, I should have been with her, Bernie. And it's like, no fucking shit, asshole. Like you should
right.
have been with your wife at this point. But and then it has this like very wrapped up little ending with like Michael Keaton in bed with Marissa Tomei and she's like, I forgot about everything that happened because I had a baby. And what Alicia's reading the newspaper and she tells a nurse to buy her own and Robert Duvall's stalking his daughter.
Leaves, yeah, watches her read the paper and she reads the whole story, like
Yeah.
stand up, like
And he's like, she's reading my paper because deep down she loves
she
me and
still loves me.
I'm still gonna keep stalking her until she presses charges. The end. Like that's and we hear that like the kids have been released from jail and thanks to the newspaper's big scoop. What a scoop they got. So it's a very watchable movie. It's it is very entertaining and I love Michael Keaton and I love Marissa Tomei. I love the cast except for Randy Quaid and but
Yeah,
you know, it's fine. And it's not even Randy Quaid is fine in the movie. I just whenever I see Randy Quaid now I'm like, ugh.
yeah, it's a bummer.
It's a bummer. Exactly. I read that Tom Hanks was the first choice for Michael Keaton's part. And I'm
He
like,
could have done it too.
totes, totes. Ron Howard had worked with Michael Keaton at this point on Night
Gung
Shift,
Ho.
Gung Ho, and then,
Night Shift we have to cover one
oh my
day.
God, why haven't we talked about
That is
Night
the
Shift?
best movie. Oh my God.
Okay, I'm writing down Night Shift right now. I'll put it on our list. We'll wait a couple weeks because we just did Michael Keaton,
Yeah.
but writing it down. Um, yeah, they'd worked together a few times, so he knows how to get Michael Keaton to do those Michael Keaton things that we love, and he's very good at that. And then I guess they wanted Paul Newman for the Robert Duvall part, and I'm like, Paul Newman would have been great too.
He would have been great, but he had a lot of problem, especially with the New York Post.
Yeah.
And I thought he would take the role because of that. But the Post used to give him a hard time because they said, "Oh, 5'8" Paul Newman, blah blah blah." Because Newman
Oh my
had,
God.
I'm not kidding you, because Newman had liberal policies and would talk
Yeah.
about it on talk
Right.
shows. So it was always like, "Oh, just shut up and act,"
Yeah.
right? That kind of thing. Even though he gave more money to charity than just about anybody. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Exactly. Oh, I forgot to mention Jason Robards shows up in the movie. He's playing like the owner of the New York Sun. And of course, Jason Robards actually won an Oscar for playing Ben
Ben
Bradley,
Bradley,
who was the editor of the Washington Post and
Watergate.
for Watergate and from All the President's Men and stuff like that, which is probably still like the very best newspaper movie
Is it
out there.
accurate, do you think?
I think so because it shows the legwork that goes
Right.
into doing those kinds of stories. I think Spotlight does the same thing. It
Mhm.
shows how, I mean, you have to talk to a lot. It's not as easy as, not that the movie The Paper makes it look easy, but also it's like he goes out and he gets like one cop to say that they didn't do it. It's like, it's not really that easy. Like,
No. And cops really back each other up too. I mean,
yeah, like in theory, like he should have gotten at least two or three sources to say they
right.
didn't do it, before you run with something like that. And I think that Spotlight and All the President's Men do a good job of showing the serious work that newspaper reporters do and that these stories can take time and
Mhm.
investment to do. This isn't that movie. So, and by the way, don't take me as like some like I know everything about newspapers. Like
You know more than
this
me.
I'm like this is just my experience with newspapers. So, I don't speak for all reporters. But I think it's an entertaining watch. I'm glad we watched it.
Yeah, it's entertaining. I mean, it's not believable,
No.
but you kind of, it is a time capsule of a movie.
Yeah.
1994. I mean,
And like what
the
a good
the phones with the antenna that you had
Yes.
to pull out, and oh my God.
Yeah. I don't remember if anyone in this movie has a pager.
I don't remember seeing any pagers.
I had a pager at one point as a reporter. Like,
And you had to have it with you all the time.
yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, at a certain point, everyone gets a cell phone, but we definitely went through a pager phase.
I know somebody who interviewed to work for the Brooklyn Borough president, Marty Markowitz, a long time ago. And one of the jobs was that you had to get a police scanner and have it on all the time at your home.
Oh my
So
God.
whenever there was a crime, Marty wanted to know about it right away.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
there is no life work balance
Mhm.
for not all reporters. Like you could be a movie critic, you could be a a reporter who covers the school board, but if you're like a daily like crime reporter or like daily political reporter, that's a totally different vibe. Like
Yeah.
you're on call like all the time and you're always thinking about work and it's very very stressful. Like
It looks it.
I worked around a lot of those people. I wrote news for a little while. I wrote arts and entertainment stuff for a while. I sat with the sports department while I was writing my like TV reviews. I was around all these different people and that shit is fucking stressful.
Yeah.
So again, special kind of person. And I think this movie does a good job of capturing that.
Yeah,
But so I will recommend. I think it's a thumbs up. Do you want to hear about 10 other movies that came out in 94?
I absolutely do.
Okay. The Chase. Do you
Who's
know
in that?
that is Charlie Sheen and Christy Swanson.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Flea's in that movie too.
That's right. You couldn't pay me to watch The Chase now. That sounds terrible, but hey, some people still love Charlie Sheen. I'm like, that's fine. You do you. Other movies, Four Weddings and a Funeral.
I think I heard of that one.
Yeah, I think so too. Oh, by the way, all of these movies came out the same month as The Paper. I wasn't
Oh,
clear on that.
March of 94.
March of 94.
Okay.
Also, Guarding Tess.
Oh God, that's Shirley MacLaine.
Yep.
And who's guarding her?
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. She's like the first lady or
Yeah,
something.
or something like that, or the first, like maybe the president's mom or something. I don't
This is
remember.
like probably a time when I saw almost everything that came out in the theater, or I
Yeah.
rented it as soon as it was available.
Oh, here's a really fun newspaper adjacent movie, The Hudsucker Proxy.
I haven't seen that in a long time. That's Coen Brothers.
Yeah, and Jennifer Jason Leigh is playing the reporter in that, and she's definitely doing
A
like
thing.
yeah, she's doing the front page basically.
Yeah.
She's playing that character. Also, The Ref.
Dennis Leary.
Yes.
And that's the Christmas one with
It
Kevin
is.
Spacey.
Yeah, but it came out in March.
Yeah,
Weird.
which is wild. It takes place at Christmas. It's actually a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I remember liking it way more than I thought I would. Also, The Naked Gun, 33 and a third.
I remember.
It's no naked gun, but there's some laughs. Above the Rim,
Basketball movie filmed in Brooklyn.
Bass. Yep, basketball movie. And two more sequels. The Mighty Ducks 2
Sure.
is a movie that exists. And then Major League 2.
Which isn't as good. I'm sorry. I like Major League, but Major League 2 is not as
It's
strong.
just no, it's not as strong. If I remember correctly, it had an end credit song though that was like, "If the van is a rockin', don't come a knockin'. If the van is," and I was like, "Oh, so terrible."
Do you want to hear about the top 10 songs the week this movie came out?
I can't wait.
All right, this is I'm gonna show how stupid I am. This is
You're
so
not
March
stupid.
25th, 1994. Well, I'm not gonna be able to pronounce some of these. Okay. Number 10, Tony Braxton, Breathe Again.
Love. We love Tony Braxton.
Now, this next one, it's Cantaloupe, Flip Fantasia
That's
from
right.
Us Three.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I know that one.
I think you know this one. Number 8, Gin and Juice, Snoop Doggy
Yeah,
Dogg.
I know just a little
I
bit
think
about
I've
that
heard that
one.
one before.
Yeah.
This is how wild it is. All right, number 7 is Richard Marx, Now and Forever.
I probably
Uh,
know it.
that was 7, excuse me. Number 6, So Much in Love by All for One. I think that was a remake of the
Oh,
original.
oh,
A bop.
maybe.
Number 5, okay, Sonia. Salt and Pepper featuring En Vogue, What a Man.
It's a good song. That's there. It's about a mighty good man. Yep.
Number 4, Celine Dion, The Power of Love.
Love Celine Dion.
Number 3, Mariah Carey, Without You.
I love
I
Mariah
can't
Carey song.
live.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
living is
and it's
without
without
you.
you. Number 2, R. Kelly, Bump and Grind.
Oh. No. Well, you couldn't get away from that song, but
And then number 1, Ace of Base, The Sign. I love that
Rem
song.
remember Ace of Base, everybody? Like, yeah.
They were great.
They were so popular. So popular. What else are you dorking out about, my friend?
So on Netflix, there's a documentary about Wham making the Last Christmas video.
Yes, I
Did you see?
started it. I started it.
It's really good. I
Yeah.
mean, George Michael was apparently the sweetest guy
I
ever.
know. Oh, it's so sweet how they talk about him and
I mean, and I guess I did see the video when it came out. It's like it doesn't really stick in my, but now that I've watched this documentary and I saw the video, I'm like, it's such a time capsule
yeah.
of the 80s. And I forgot that they were competing for, they wanted to be the number one Christmas song
Yeah.
that year, but it's the year they released Do They Know It's Christmas?
Well, also, like, it's so funny. I don't know. I never knew this was a thing until Love Actually, when what's that character's name? Bill.
Bill Nighy.
Yeah, like his whole thing is like he wants to release a Christmas song and be number one, and that's a thing that people like actively
In
try to do. I didn't know that
Yes.
was a thing until I saw that. So then to see in the documentary that that's what they're trying to do here, I was like, oh, it's, I get it now. I get it.
And their friends just he like I said, he just seems like he was the sweetest person and
Yeah.
very generous with his friends, and they miss him so much. And it's really good. It was a really good visit. And then there's a movie called The Six Triple Eight.
Oh, I haven't watched that one yet.
It's a Tyler Perry movie. So it's based on a true story
Story.
that I never knew about, and it's a shame. But during World War II, there were the WACs, which is the Women's Auxiliary something or other for the Army.
Okay.
And this is just women serving in the Army because women weren't allowed to serve in combat. So if you wanted to serve, you could volunteer, but they would put you in places, like the USO or whatever.
Right. Right.
So in America, there were African American or Latino, anybody who wasn't white.
Yes.
If you signed up to be a WAC, you were lumped together because of segregation. And the army was segregated, the troops were segregated. So there's this group of Black women, almost 1,000 of them, in Georgia training. And what's happening is that the men overseas, men and women overseas, people serving overseas, they're not getting their mail because people don't know where to send it. It's like
Mm.
Buddy Fox in Lyon, Paris.
Yeah.
You,
It's
you,
like it
you
could
don't
be
know.
anywhere.
He could be anywhere, but this is the only way you can hear from your family and your family can hear from you. And so, but the World War II took America by surprise. It shouldn't have, but it did. So we had a difficult time just getting troops together and then over there and then figuring out where to put people. So the mail just keeps getting piled up and piled up. And it's years that people are not
Mm.
hearing from their family.
I can't even imagine. I would be,
No.
that's
Oh, I mean,
so
my
awful.
my dad's uncle was a prisoner of war in the Philippines, and they didn't hear from him for 4 years,
That's so fucking
which is
scary.
so scary to think about. So they have all this mail all over. It's in England and in France at these different depots, and nobody can figure out what to do because it's just a huge problem. So of course, what do? We've learned this lesson. You get Black women to do it. You give them
Hmm.
the job. You don't give them the respect. You don't give them a great title, but you give them the job, and these women fucking figure the shit out.
Yeah.
And they give them 6 months to figure out 17 million pieces of mail.
Oh my God.
They do it in three.
I've never heard this story ever.
And it's a documentary, and I watched that. It was on PBS, and it's one of those things like these women weren't really honored until the 80s. It's not even until like 5 years ago that the White House did anything. Like
Ugh.
it's one of those stories that got lost in history.
Right.
So it's Kerry Washington as the executive producer,
I love
and
her.
she stars. She's great, and we love her. I don't watch a lot of Tyler Perry movies, but I've heard
Mm.
the criticisms. And let me just say, Susan Sarandon plays Eleanor Roosevelt
Oh, okay.
with teeth
Oh, okay.
and a wig. And Sam Waterston is playing FDR.
Okay.
And Oprah's in there as well.
Oh, all right.
So there's some cameos. There's some flourishes I would do. I think the writing could be a little better. I think Tyler Perry produces a lot of content. He creates a lot of work for
Yes, he does.
people. I will say that he's a content creator. He helps get a lot of stories being told. Everything's filmed in Atlanta. They do it on the cheap and they do it, quickly and
Yeah.
efficiently. Um, I would, I think the story should be told again one day. It could be like a mini series because there's so many aspects of the story. The women are shipped to Scotland, and none of them have ever been on a ship before.
Yeah.
And they're going through the waters when they realize they're sending these women because the Germans have U-boats everywhere and they could get
Oh my
sabotaged.
God.
So then some of them were sent to Ireland for a little bit and then went to Scotland because of the threat of the bombing underwater, whatever that's called, torpedoes.
Yeah,
And then when they get to and they're treated like shit by all the white men in
of course.
charge. And it's really infuriating. It's infuriating as a woman. And I'm
Yeah.
absolutely certain as a woman of color, it's going to feel very familiar, but it's very uplifting. The women are the story, the women are the stars, the women are the center, which is what it should be.
Yes.
It's a really interesting story. It's something we should know. But I would just say Susan Sarandon with some fake wax teeth as
Mm.
Eleanor Roosevelt. Susan Sarandon as Eleanor Roosevelt.
Did
It's
you mention there was a documentary on PBS?
yes, and I
Okay.
watched that this morning.
I think I would prefer that. I might
It
watch
it's a
that instead.
it's a basic documentary from
Yeah.
PBS, but which means it's really well done. They have
Yeah.
great footage because it's the US government. They can get, rights to everything. They filmed everything these women training and they just had to be, like women, we have to
Yeah.
be so much better. We can't make
Yep.
any mistakes. We
Correct.
can't have any problems. We can't we can't exclaim any kind of fear or anger. We have to just keep it all in.
Yeah.
And so all that's going to feel familiar. But like I said, this made me go down the rabbit holes of learning about a story that I wish I had known before.
Hmm.
So I recommend,
Okay.
I, I say I recommend it, but you'll know what I mean when I say it's a Tyler Perry production when you see it. You're gonna be like,
Okay.
ah, okay. Like they
Okay.
say the thing and then they show the thing and then they say the thing again. Like it's scenes back to back.
Okay.
Like we get it. She's sad. Okay. Like
Okay. Good to know.
and Real Housewives, Salt Lake City,
Jesus.
so good.
What a masterpiece.
These women with all their personality disorders in Mexico for Vita Tequila.
So
I
good.
just love it. It's so good. It's
Look,
so great.
they all go to dinner and there's a huge fight and everyone's fighting and Lisa gets up and leaves and she's crying and Mary says, "What happened to dessert?" And I was like, so fucking funny. I was like, it's like the nobody's perfect of Real Housewives. I was
Yes,
like, it's so like all this drama. And like Mary's like, "Where's dessert?" It's like chef's kiss. Like
it's
so
so
good.
amazing. It's so amazing. If you're looking for that diversion,
My God, it's the season is so... I was worried this season because last season was so good.
right? It was a
And it
master class,
yeah,
and
and
it's
just
even better.
and it ends with the like receipts, timeline, screenshot, and you're like, God, how do you come back from that in this season? Every episode, so fucking good.
It's so great.
Love it so much.
Yeah. And that's my list.
That's a great list. My list is really short. I've been watching Queer Eye, the new season of Queer Eye on Netflix. I don't know if I talked about this last week, but they Bobby is not on the show anymore, and they added this new man named Jeremiah. He's great. I
Yeah,
love
he's
him.
very empathetic.
Very empathetic. Cries every time. Like very empathetic, but also really good at what he's doing. And it is like just every episode is just a little hour of empathy, a little hour of a glimpse of humanity that is so positive and it's so sweet and every pretty much every episode makes me cry and that's mainly what I've been watching this week. But I also went out and I saw A Complete Unknown.
Right. So I forgot to ask you, what did you think?
I thought it was fine. Okay, so
Okay.
okay, let me tell you. I went with my friend Beegs, and if you're listening, hi Beegs. Beegs, I was like, this movie was like created in a lab for Beegs. I was like, Beegs loves Timothy Chalamet, loves Bob Dylan music and folk music and all of that stuff. Um, I know who Bob Dylan is. I know the songs, but like I don't sit around and listen to Bob Dylan. Like I know
So
who
I'm
he
in
is.
between. I'm in between. I'm a
Okay.
fan and I have the box set.
Yeah.
I've actually seen him live, and he was pretty good. He
Yeah,
doesn't have a lot of rapport with the audience. He's
for
not
sure.
exactly Mr. Warmth,
Yeah,
he's not like James Brown or somebody that's going to put on a show,
right. And
but he's Bob Dylan.
yeah, exactly. And so I went in and I was like, "Hey, I'm like I was curious about the movie. Like it has people I really love in it. Like I still like I love Edward Norton. I think he's so great and he plays Pete Seeger in this. Not Bob Seeger, everybody, Pete Seeger.
From
Appar-
Brooklyn.
Apparently there's a whole thing where like people keep thinking it's Bob Seeger,
Really?
which cracks me up. I'm like they're like, "Yeah,
He
he's
would
not
have been in like elementary
in this
school or whatever.
like I was like he's not going to sing Night Moves. You're in for a disappointment." Like he's singing. By the way, I was one of those people back in the 90s. I was like, "Pete Seeger, do you mean Bob Seeger?" Like I understand the mistake, but he's playing Pete Seeger. He's very good. Everyone in the movie is so good. So the cast is Timothy Chalamet's Bob Dylan, Monica Barbaro is playing Joan Baez. She was in Maverick. She was like the only female pilot in Maverick.
Oh, right, right.
And then Edward Norton is playing Pete Seeger. Boyd Holbrook, who was in Narcos, is playing Johnny Cash. And then Elle Fanning is playing someone named Sylvie, who I think is like a
That's his
combination.
teenage girlfriend that
Yeah,
was on the cover of his first album.
okay, they don't they never say that she's a teenager in this.
Oh,
And
yeah, she was like 17.
oh yeah,
But he was like 21 or 22. Look, this is
right,
the 60s, y'all. My mother
right.
got married at 19, so it's not that, but she was like a senior in high school or
Yeah.
maybe a freshman in
And
college.
everyone is really, really good. Like if they start winning awards for, I was like, I fucking get it. Like everyone's really good. They're doing their own singing, their own playing of instruments. Like they're really good. But I walked out of like the movie ended and Biggs is like, "What'd you think?" And I was like, I didn't learn anything about Bob Dylan from this. Like
Yeah,
there's like kind of like a timeline, like, oh, he arrives in New York. He meets Woody Guthrie. He performs at a local place. He meets Joan Baez. They kind of have a thing that's off and on. And then he makes these decisions. He meets Pete Seeger and like Pete Edward Norton is Pete Seeger. He's playing like the nicest man on the planet. Like he's so nice and kind and like there's a million shots in the movie of like Timothy Chalamet like playing the guitar and doing his Bob Dylan and it's really good and all it is shots of like Edward Norton and Monica Barbaro and Elle Fanning looking at him in awe, like of how amazing he is.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden he's like, I want to play electric. And everyone's like, please don't do that. And he's like at a folk music festival and he's going to play
Newport.
electric. Yeah. And everyone's like, please don't do that. And he's like insisting that he's going to do that. And then I'm like, but why? Like I never learned anything about Bob Dylan. He's truthfully, he's a dick to most of the people in the movie. And I'm like,
Yeah, he is in life too.
yeah. And I was like, why is he such a dick? Like I don't
He's an
understand.
enigma.
And so I was like, well, the name of the movie is A Complete Unknown. I was like, is that the point? Is it the point that we don't know Bob Dylan and
Yeah.
we don't understand why he does? And I was like, I guess that's I was like, if that's what the movie's trying to tell us, then I guess I get it. And I was like, oh, but I wanted to know more about Bob Dylan. So like I went to Letterbox and I was like, it's 3 stars. Like this is a 3 star movie because the performances are so great. But I felt like I didn't learn anything about Bob Dylan. And my friend Beeks is like, well, if you've seen the documentary, don't look back. Is that what it's called? Or
Yeah.
don't look? Yeah. She's like, you know that this happened and that happened. And I was like, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
So
if you don't know
yeah.
the mythos around it, the
Yes.
mythology, then yeah, I get that. Yeah, because my dad was into folk a little bit for a while. And he didn't like electric guitars and he wasn't into that. And it was a huge deal when Bob Dylan did that because
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
so popular before. And people booed him. And
Yes.
it was a rough, to this day, they still have the Newport Jazz Festival and it's a big deal.
Right.
But he was a prognosticator and he was influenced by Buddy Holly, who we talked about on What a Creep,
Yes.
who's not a creep, by the way, but he could see the future and the future was electric.
Right. I think, and I don't think I'm I think I'm an attentive viewer. I think I was
Yeah.
paying close attention. I don't mind a movie that asks me to maybe fill in some gaps for myself and make some leaps, but because I think the movie is assuming a certain amount of base Bob Dylan knowledge that I didn't have
Yeah.
for me to fill in some blanks. But my friend Beegs loved the movie, loved
Oh,
it.
okay. That was the question I was going to ask.
Yeah,
What did she
she
think?
she loved it. Like she understood everything that was going on. She was blown away by Timothy Chalamet's perform. I mean, super impressed with the performances. I've made that very clear. But like, and then after the movie, she's like, "Well, he did that because of this or that." And I was like, "Well, see, I wouldn't know that from the movie, and I think movies need to stand on their own."
They do. They
But
do.
I'm also like, "Okay, well, maybe this one is it's not made for me." You
It's
know,
for the
it's
fans.
yeah, and I was like, and that's cool. Like that's great. And I will go watch that documentary. And I thought about watching the Todd Haynes movie, I'm Not There, with all the different
Yeah.
people.
Eh,
And I was like, maybe I would like that. I don't know. So
I don't think you would, but
okay.
that's just me. I'm just guessing. My favorite Bob Dylan story is I used to love Bill Graham. I used to follow Bill Graham. He was a rock and roll promoter,
Yes.
Bay Area. Uh, he escaped the Nazis and came to America. He was known to be a very tough guy, but loved music and loved artists. And he was promoting Bob Dylan on his first tour in so many years in the 80s. And Bill Graham would go around to tell everybody, he goes, this everybody bugs this man like he's a god, like he's a king. Leave him alone. He just wants to go on stage and play. He doesn't want anybody bothering him. Leave him alone. So people are like, okay, because some artists do have that. You can't make eye contact, you can't do this, can't do
Right.
that. So a couple of weeks into the tour, Bob Dylan takes him aside. He goes, "Hey, can we talk?" He's like, "Sure." He goes, "How come nobody's talking to me?"
Oops. Oopsie. He's I'm so lonely.
Yeah, he's like, "How come no one's talking to me?" He thought they all hated him. He was really insecure. And he was like, "No, no,
So,
no." Yeah,
oh,
which is kind
well,
of lovable.
that is kind of lovable. So, anyway, if you really like Bob Dylan music and you know a lot about Bob Dylan, you'll probably really like this movie. So, I don't not recommend it. Um, I
But
liked
would you?
it.
Yeah, I mean, I could I wait for streaming?
Totes. You
Yeah,
totally could wait for streaming. I watch, but I'm all, if anything, watching it streaming might be great because then you can watch it with the subtitles and understand what they're saying.
he mumbles a lot,
He
and
does.
he doesn't emote when he's talking. Like his eyes don't
Yeah.
make a lot of gestures. Like he's an enigma. People,
Yeah.
he's a Jewish kid from the Midwest who came to New York and completely invented himself.
Yeah. I just think the title is telling you, I guess, what you're in for.
Yeah,
And I was like, no, surely, surely they'll give us more information. And so again, if you're a fan, I think the movie will work for you a little bit more than it did for me. But I still liked it. It's just you could wait for streaming, in my opinion. It's it's not very cinematic. I even saw it in IMAX. For some reason, they were showing it in IMAX.
there's something coming out in IMAX soon, and I shouldn't have even brought it up because I can't remember what the hell it was. But there's something that's coming out soon in IMAX. I'm like, I would actually go to see that, and now I can't
Oh,
remember. So we'll have to talk about it next week, I guess.
yeah. I'm like, Margo, it'd get you to go to the theater. Dang,
It could happen.
it could happen.
It's
That's amazing.
happening.
I'm going to see Queer next week, the Daniel Craig movie based
Yeah,
on I forget who's the name of the author.
William S.
And
Burroughs.
yes, yes, thank you. So I'll report back on that one.
I'm sure that'll be a laugh riot.
Yeah, it's gonna be hilarious. Can't wait.
This is the time of year where they release the most depressing films.
Totally. It's like
It's
awards.
Oscar bait.
Yeah, it's Oscar Beatty season, and all of the movies are gonna be these like kind of downers, and I'll probably totally watch them. It'll work on me. I'll go see them. So I think that's everything. Um, yeah, that's I like I said, I haven't seen that much this week, I guess. I've also I have been listening to something. Jenny Jamie Loftus, who did the ACK podcast
Yeah.
and the Lolita podcast, has a new one out that she's been doing called 16 Minutes of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
And right now she's doing a whole series on the manosphere. And
Ugh.
I listened to the first episode and it's about like the history of kind of how we got to um the Andrew Tates and the Joe Rogans and all that. So it's a lot of history about like the men's rights movement of the 60s and 70s and kind of how we got to where we are. I think it's super interesting. Again, talk about a fucking bummer. Like it's
Yeah.
a fucking
That was a no
bummer.
thank you for me. I like her too. And
Yeah.
she's so intelligent. I like how she puts things together, but I was like, yeah, this is gonna be too rough for me. But
Yeah, I'm spacing them out. It's not something I can listen to one right after the other, because it is a super bummer. But if you're interested in that topic, she always does a really good job. She researches everything, and I appreciate her storytelling. And
yeah,
so
same.
yeah, that's something I'm going to put it right here on the list so I don't forget 16 minutes of fame. And I think that's everything. If you like the sound of our voices, we also co-host a podcast called What a Creep. We've already mentioned it. Our episode out right now is about the day the music died. Another laugh riot.
It was, yeah, we had people say they got very teary-eyed towards the end listening to us.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. So, but Margo did an awesome job. And then we ended the episode with someone who's not a creep, which we always do. So at least at the end, feel a
Yeah.
little bit better about the world. My friend, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads and Instagram, and I'm at Brooklyn Margo for TikTok and Blue Sky.
And follow her on the YouTube, please. She,
Yes, at my
she
name, Margo Donahue.
Yeah, she's always posting clips there, and like her new book, Fever, about Saturday Night Fever, is coming out next year.
It's
So
coming out next year. It's
it's
happening.
happening. So you want to get in on all that action. You can find me at thesoniashow.com and the Sonia Show on Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram. And you could go to Facebook if you want. You could email us at dorkingoutshow@gmail.com. If you give us your address, Margo will send you stickers because she's a delightful human who would do that for you. Also, we take requests. So if you have requests of movies you would like us to dork out about, send them our way on any of those social channels or email us. And make sure you like and subscribe and do all those things so you never miss an episode. And thanks for dorking out about the paper with me, my friend. This was super fun.
Stop the presses.
Stop them! Stop the presses!